And until people really get rid of the private central banking system, every other topic you mention it's pointless even to mention them in a sense. You have to cut off the head of the snake to stop that having the power over the whole of the body. And really that's where the whole thing is power is in money. And those boys who control the money control Congress and everything else to do with it. And all the politicians who are simply bought off and placed in power. And talking of them too, I was thinking about the degradation of society that was all part of this big system. And I've talked before about Bezmenov, who came over from basically he was stationed from Russia in India at the time, and he managed to wangle his way over to Canada. He got a job at the CBC where he said that he'd never met so many communists as he had in the CBC. And that's obvious for if you ever try and watch their programming without your hair turning grey. But anyway, he said the same thing. He said that in the 70s the KGB was so surprised and delighted that the contamination, the moral decay had taken on so well within the United States and elsewhere. And that, of course, was, from the 60s onwards, when they were pushing the liberalism, they called it, through the school. And we find that Khrushchev and others actually called liberalism just the American version of communism. But it also meant the relaxation and the destruction of all that was before, all the previous rules. And free sex has always been at the top of the tree, because you cannot conquer society until the society cannot stand together as a society with a unified culture. It's easy pickings, and once you start breaking it up, and you find that the moral decay sets in. And then, of course, the next push is for single mothers. And then you find most women don't want children at all now. So there's been very, very successful in what they wanted to accomplish. This is all discussed, remember, in the books in communism, and you can pick them up, used very, very cheap today, about the various parts of this big takeover of the West. They said that the West would fall without firing a shot from within, and they're pretty well right on that. Because even the ancients, the philosophers in Greece and elsewhere, knew that a culture that was completely and utterly immoral is a normal way to be, and it's the new normal now. You see, it's normalized. This contamination, as it's called, it's normalized. And people don't realize that they're products of a process of demoralization and contamination. Maybe 3 generations have lived through this. And each generation makes it easier for the next one to go further and further and further, which is exactly the way it was always planned. Until you end up in the middle of a world at war. This is a world war going on. You've had a world war going on really continuously since at least the Gulf War I, I'd say, and the entire Middle East and all the NATO countries involved. That's what you call a world war, for those who don't realize what you're going through. And it never stopped with Gulf War I. Every president, including Clinton, sent cruise missile after cruise missile over into Iraq pretty well every day. And the U.S. taxpayer picked up the tab to replace all those cruise missiles and get fresh new painted ones. It's a great business, the disposable income really, as these things go pop and you immediately order a new one. But contamination, as I say, is now the norm. And it reminds me of Brave New World, exactly what Huxley knew in Brave New World, and his other book, Brave New World Revisited, where he explains where the novel could actually be made to come true with the use of science and psychology and cultural control. And that's what we've been living through for an awful long time. So he knew it all back then, and he should do, because his family were related to the Darwins, and they were up in all the big global meetings of his day. And they knew eventually they'd destroy all that had kept people together and fought off. You see, if you're not unified, you can't fight off enemies of any kind whatsoever. And even on a personal level sometimes. So you must deculturalize, demoralize, and eventually you'll get to your goal of literally breeding the type of citizens you want, if you need many at all. And of course you won't need that many for this brave new world that they've been talking about for so long. And now we're at the stage, we've been living through it for years, where politicians at one time used to just step down when they were caught or found in disgrace, as it was called. Because after all, if they can't if they're going to take a position of responsibility and uphold a tradition, you see, you've got to understand traditions are awfully important. When you start throwing traditions out the window, then anything goes, and you will have no morality or integrity at the top either. And of course, I can remember when Clinton had his little dalliance, which the press made sure we all knew about. And to be honest with you, I think that really was a trial balloon, because they could have got him on so many other women before that, but they kept it quiet for years. The Secret Service were basically cleaning up all these messes that they left behind them. So when they gave you Monica Lewinsky, it was like a soap opera, and it was presented like a soap opera, and I knew then this was a trial balloon. I says, he's probably going to be more popular, especially amongst the women, after this than before. And sure enough, that's what came in the various polls. So you're trained, you're constantly being trained, and you don't know it. Isolated incidents are not so isolated after all, and they kind of come out on cue, because believe you me, if they want to cover things up at the top, you'll never ever hear about them. They're awfully good at covering up at the top. And I was looking at this article today with this representative from New York, and it said that even the way it's worded in the newspaper, it says, should Representative Anthony Weiner resign after sexting? They call it sexting. Get fed up with these terms, revelations. So should he resign? So it's almost like a question to the public, isn't it? And that's how they put it to you. Then a little paragraph really. It says, earlier this year, Representative Chris Lee, a married Republican from New York, resigned within hours after it was revealed he sent a topless photograph of himself to a woman he met on Craigslist. Now Representative Anthony Weiner, a Democrat from New York, has revealed he sexted with multiple women over the course of the last several years. He also lied about a photograph which was released last week, saying his Twitter account had been hacked. So he's a liar as well, you see. And instead, he now admits it was a photograph of him and that he sent it to the recipient. So I guess Weiner was showing his Winnie to somebody. So this is the kind of stuff that they're giving you. And then it says at the bottom, what do you think? Can Representative Weiner's career recover from this episode? He's apparently not broken any laws. Is his behavior relevant to his role in public service? Well, yeah, if he's a liar, you see, it definitely is relevant to his role in public service. And if he's standing up there, again, trying to appear impeccable in his manners or his behavior or the charade that he has around him, and he's actually doing this kind of stuff, well, can you really trust a guy like that on anything whatsoever? He's out for himself, obviously. You understand, if you get up into any position of authority, you're on a platform then, and you've got to watch yourself. You've got to watch yourself. And this character is doing, I guess, what a lot of them probably do. They don't care anymore. They know society's kaput. Just look at all the stuff they watch on TV. The children are taught amazing stuff now as well in school. All kinds of stuff. So, again, I've said many times, pedophilia will go out the window one day, not too long in the future, as they go to town on all this kind of stuff. And marriage itself is just a plummet. It's just about 2 inches to hit the ground now, I think. And that's it gone. So it's been awfully successful, because if you want to conquer any peoples at all who once were very strong and they don't realize it, that they're so stupid. People are so stupid, they don't realize that it was their culture that kept them strong. It was their culture that gave them the zest and the fight. When that's gone, you're anybody's. You're on the target list, and you're easy prey. People should really, really remember that. And then you just look through today's news again, and then you get this one here. Delaware pediatrician, a doctor who looks after children, goes on trial for alleged sex abuse. And I'll talk about this when I come back. Over 103 children, some as young as 2. Back with more after this break. Hi folks, we're back and cutting through the matrix, talking about the culture and how society has been totally contaminated, as the KGB used to call it, culturally, morally, and every other way too, which again, remember, was a part of the whole Communist Manifesto, was destruction of the family unit, and on it went. So, I'm talking about how as they progress in this wonderful progression, they call this society, the civilization progressive, you see. And you got to always wonder where it's supposed to go, this progression. And I know where it's supposed to go. I've read all their books. And when they talk about civilization and progress, they're actually talking about this big agenda. And they always have been for 200 or 300 years, actually. And eventually we'll all be chipped and brain dead, hopefully. You know, to read this rotten news, we won't have to read any more bad news again. And then we'll all be quite happy because we won't know any better. But until then, we've got to go through this system here. As I say, they make the omelette and break the eggs to make the new system and beard the broken eggshells. So, as I say, here's a Delaware pediatrician goes on trial for alleged sex abuse. You can't watch a movie anywhere now without it in it. It's got to have sex in it. It just has to be there, you know, just standard. And children are all watching this stuff, and they're encouraged in school as well to do all this stuff. There's one company now, I don't even know if it was Canada or somewhere else, who was pulling in young children before their puberty to ask them to make sure of their gender in case they want a sex change. I'm not kidding you. This is how stupid and ridiculous everything is now, but it's a purpose behind it. It's not willy-nilly and just occasional group here and there that's pushing for this stuff. Anyway, it says, a judge heard evidence Tuesday at the one-day bench trial of a Delaware pediatrician accused of molesting 103 of his patients, some of them 5 years old or younger. Judge William C. Carpenter hearing the case of Earl Bradley, 58 years old. And this is the thing, too, about perverts. They never slow down all through their lives until they die. It's weird. It's really weird, you know, because it's a power thing too. Anyway, advised attorneys he will issue his verdict later, the court officials said. Bradley, whose practice was in Lewis, went into the trial facing 529 counts of rape, sexual exploitation of children, unlawful sexual contact, and other charges. So I guess he made a deal and brought it down to 103. 529. Huh? And it says, prosecutors filed an amendment indictment on Tuesday condensing the charges against Bradley in 24 counts. There were no new victims or incidents alleged in the new indictment. No, they wouldn't. They'd rule them out as part of the deal. The charges accused Bradley of first-degree rape, forcing girls to perform oral sex on him, and filming dozens of children engaging in sexual acts. Bradley waived his right to a jury trial and was tried before Carpenter, according to the court officials in Georgetown, Delaware. So, it says police officers and detectives, but not any of the alleged victims testified Tuesday. You understand the court systems now, they all make their little deals and all the rest of it. And often even the people who are victims can't get a word in at all. They're not allowed to speak whatsoever, or their parent or parents if they have to, lucky enough to have two these days. But, it just shows you how far it's all gone. Everything's gone off in its own little system now. Well, this is our system. This is the law system, you see. And there's a policy now to do it this way. Yeah. Evidence is based on videos seized from Bradley's home and office, the Delaware Attorney General Bo Biden has said. In April, Carpenter ruled against a defense motion to suppress. Public defenders challenged the scope of a search warrant used to acquire videotape evidence from two buildings. So, I mean, this guy has been in a big pedophile ring, obviously. And there'll be some big names involved, as always. And you'd be surprised, you know. Or maybe you would be surprised now, I don't know. But this is, again, all symptomatic of a decaying civilization, the type that Professor Carol Quigley talks about on how empires and nations rise and they get to this stage and then all this stuff happens. It's a formula, you understand. And then it falls apart from within. And then there's a lot of brutality, especially on the part of the state. If the state ever wants you to be defenseless, they destroy the culture first. You understand? That's what they do. And then no one will stand up for anyone else. So it's a formula. Remember, it's a formula. And so you must bring out the same formula to get the same results when you're changing into a new order, or a new world order as is now.